Good. Good question from Giroux. We'll get to that in a second. Okay, let's start. We got a great question here about a kid, 13 years old. Question is, my daughter was in tears after her softball game because the coach said that she wasn't running around hard enough for missed balls, whatever it was, whatever that means. I guess she wasn't working hard enough. She's the catcher on her team. She felt she was doing the best she could do, the daughter did. So what would you recommend that I say to her as I was taking her home? This is very important information. So all of you parents out there, take note of this, because kids are going to get this all their lives. And adults need to know what to do with this kind of information too. Every time somebody yells at you, criticizes you, whatever, you're stupid, you're not doing a good job, you're whatever, and this is what you tell your daughter in exactly these words. Every time somebody does that with you, you got to remember that what they're telling you isn't necessarily true. They may have had a bad day. They may just be an idiot. They may be blind. They may be stupid. But see, you don't know any of that. And you know the cool thing? You don't need to know any of that. You don't have to make all those interpretations. So what do you do with all this information? This is so easy. You take all those yellings and rantings and criticizings and all that stuff, anything that somebody tells you about you, and you regard it as potentially useful information. That's all. So the coach says to you, you weren't running around hard enough for balls during the game. Maybe, for example, a ball was hit and you could have run harder to get it. So what you do is you stop and you ask yourself, is it possible that I could have maybe run harder? Maybe I was lazy. Maybe I was goofing around a little bit. Maybe I could have put more of myself into the game. Maybe that's true. All right. So you say to the coach, okay, coach, I'll look for that. I'll pay more attention to that. It's potentially useful information. Then after the game, maybe you think about it and realize, I pretty much worked myself absolutely into a lather to the point that by the end of the game, I had no energy left, whatever. So, no, actually, I couldn't have run any harder. So, no, what the coach said isn't true. So now we're done with that interaction, aren't we? It turns out it wasn't useful information. So it's potentially useful information. But I don't have to take it as the truth. I certainly don't have to feel criticized. Do you get it? You see what you just taught your daughter? You just gave her a freaking key to life. Instead of protecting her. See what a huge mistake you'd make if you say to your daughter, "Oh no, sweetie, you don't have to listen to the terrible bad man or woman," or whoever's coaching the team. We'll make it a man this time, who cares? "You don't have to listen to the terrible bad man as he's telling you that you're not a good girl." Now see, you've turned her into a victim and tried to protect her and rescue her. Well, you can't rescue your daughter all her life. That's a terrible mistake. You don't want to make it worse by attacking her and saying, "Well, that's right, you should have run harder for the balls all the game." Now you're going to make that worse. No, you want to give her an actual life skill. You want to teach her how to respond to people who are, on occasion, going to attack her all of her life. Tell her what to do with that. And we've all had that, haven't we? We've had the boss come in and say, "You did this wrong." Well, what do we do with that? Most of us have reacted badly to that kind of attack all of our lives because we've been attacked by our parents and others all of our lives. And we haven't known how to respond to that. Well, what if we were just to regard it as potentially useful information? So the boss comes in and says, "You're an idiot." So you say, "Well, you know, this might be useful information. So tell me how I'm an idiot, because heaven knows if I am, I'd need to know that and would want to improve on it. So tell me what you see." So the boss says, "Well, you should have done this and this and this and this." And it turns out the boss is just flat wrong about 80% of what he says. Well, who cares? Listen to the 20% of what he's saying that's right and improve your performance. The 80% that he's wrong about, throw it away. You're done. And that's what you teach your daughter to do. You teach your daughter to do what most of us as adults have never learned to do. And that is to take the information that's incorrect and just go, so people make mistakes. So people have bad days. So people are idiots when they tell us stuff that's not true. You ignore that part. Use the part that's useful and don't use the part that isn't. We're done. Instead of fussing, fuming, crying about it, letting it ruin our softball game, and so on. Big deal. My daughter and I went to a football game recently, and my grandchild was going to his first football practice ever. And we went to the game, and the football coach was at the game going, and he was stomping and fuming kind of like your prototypical football coach. "If you don't do that right, you're going to have to do laps the whole practice instead of..." I mean, he was acting like kind of a jerk, really. And my daughter's initial reaction was kind of like, "Whoa, wait a minute. I'm not sure I want my son to be around this." And I said, "Be cool. Watch this. See how it plays out." I had kind of a feeling that maybe this wasn't what the coach was about, that this was more directed at one particular kid for a particular reason. And sure enough, turns out that this was directed at his own son, because he wanted his son to be more of an example to all the rest of the kids, and the kid had just embarrassed the coach in front of everybody, so he wanted to put his son in his place. And after he got his son kind of calmed down and quit showing off, the coach turned out to be a reasonable guy. And my daughter was glad that she kept her kid there during football practice. And the coach said a couple of, a little bit harsh things to her son and to some of the kids during the practice, but it was an opportunity to teach her son how to deal with some of the harsh realities of dealing with human beings, And we need to learn to show our kids how to deal with the harsh realities of life. And as we do that, we give them such a great social skills, such great skills in dealing with life. So this is a great chance for you to teach your daughter. So way to go. Great question. And thanks for asking it. Bless your heart. Melissa said, "You once advised me to run like a deer from a relationship with a person who was exhibiting controlling behaviors. This was in an early phase of the relationship. I could run from every controlling person I encounter, but I'm not sure that would contribute to my growth or to improving my ability to be loving. How do I deal with people in my life who try to be controlling? Partners, customers, friends. In this particular relationship, I told you to run from a relationship because you were headed into a relationship that was already becoming exclusive and intimate. So I wouldn't tell you to run from every relationship where there was an element of controlling. Are you clear about the difference? Making sense? So you can't run from every single relationship where there's an element of controlling. This one was different because this was way much more exclusive. This was about to turn into an exclusive lifetime relationship. So it was a different deal. So let me make that part clear. So now, let's say that we're in a relationship with somebody who's not about to become a lifetime partner, and somebody goes to control you. Then, that part, that's easy. So then let's say that somebody is telling you what to do. It's such an easy pleasure almost just to tell somebody, well, thank you for that suggestion. Let's say, for example, somebody's trying to control where you're going to go on a date, for example. And you say, well, thanks for that suggestion, but, I'd really like to go here. And they say, no, I want to go. I know you do. But rather than simply determine where we're going to go, let's discuss it. So once I'm clear that you've actually heard what I'd like to do, we may end up actually going where you'd like to go. But to this point, I don't think you've really heard what I want, heard what my desires are. So with controlling people, you just stop until it's clear that they've heard what you have to say. For an example, I was dealing with a mother. Now this is a little off the subject, not much, but I had a mother recently who was trying to get her son to compete in a particular sport at school. And she was trying to get me to participate in getting him to participate in that sport too. She wanted me to know how I would get him to do that. She didn't know me very well. I said, well, I wouldn't. I think you're being controlling. You're not listening to him. He's telling you with his behavior that he doesn't want to do it. Well, but I think he should do it. Whoa, maybe he should. Well, it would be good for him. Maybe. But the point is you're controlling him. Her whole behavior was all about, this is what you have to do. You're not listening to him. And so she's actually a delightful human being and a good friend. And so I just showed her how it's all about the controlling. And so I showed her what not controlling would look like. How if she went home and said to her son, this has all been my fault. I've been trying to make you do this. All I'm really interested in is you being physically fit, for example. All I'm really interested in is you being happy and you doing something that would give you some physical fitness. And I don't care if it's in joining this particular team or whatever. I just need you to do something where you're away from the computer, for example. As soon as he sensed that she wasn't trying to control him, as soon as that was off the table, he went right back and participated in that particular sport that she was trying to control him to participate in the first place. Turns out it was a cross-country team. And now he loves it. And now he goes to practice every day, where she used to have to chain up his feet and tie him behind the car and drag him off to practice. And now he runs off to practice every day. And has cut his time in this particular event by so much that the coach can't even believe how much his time has gone down, which could never have happened with just practice alone. It's been because she's quit controlling him. It's all about the controlling. So that partly answers your question and partly answers a question you didn't ask in the first place, which is, I suppose, controlling on my part. The point is, anytime you sense that you're being controlled in a relationship, you need to simply put up your hand and go, stop here. did you hear what I said? You can always do that. Always you have a right to do that. Without responding, and this is what most people do. Most people, when they're being controlled, they respond by doing what? Controlling. So they take control over the situation and say, you can't do that to me. Well, that's just as controlling actually as what the other person was doing. So, no, you just say, did you hear what I said? Let me try again. Let me say that again. You don't insist. You just stop and say, did you hear me? You give the person another chance. But you don't react by controlling or defending. Is that making sense? Let me know if it doesn't. Here's a great follow-up question. Melissa continues and says, so if someone is resisting us, does that typically mean that we might be trying to control them? Roughly 98% of the time, yes. Not always. Some people are resistant because they've been controlled so much, they'll resist you only because they've been controlled by other people. Does that make sense to you? I mean, some people are so used to being controlled, they resist everybody. So all you have to do is breathe and they'll resist you. But most of the time, if somebody's resisting you, it's because you're controlling them. We have this little sensor buried in our brains that has law of choice printed on it. And if you reach out with a child, with an adult, anybody, and you reach out and you try to control them, it's like, this alarm goes off and they'll go crazy till you quit it. That's what happened with the child of this mother that I was talking to you about with the cross-country team. I was at a group tonight, in fact, and she reported. She said that was when she reported about this child. She said, the instant I quit controlling him, he became a different person. Poof, the problem was gone. People hate being controlled. And if somebody's fighting you, I would strongly suggest you look at the possibility that you might be trying to control them, even though you're sure you're not. Melissa goes on and says, I've noticed that often when I try to control another person, or when I try to control, or another person is trying to control me, it's because we're afraid. No kidding. Is it too much to directly address the fear, or do you think the other person might be too empty? Yeah. If I'm controlling you, that's the only reason we control. We only control when we're afraid. Period. People only control because they're trying to keep things from hurting them. If I'm afraid you might hurt me, then I'm going to control you in every possible way so that you won't. That's what control's all about. Now, can we directly address the fear? Usually not. If you're trying to control me and I say, what are you afraid of? If you're in fear, people who are afraid are usually temporarily insane, and they don't usually hear discussions about their fear very well. Now, you'll find occasional exceptions, but not usually. Fearful people are nuts. And so temporarily, usually the solution is just loving them. So you love them, and then once they're not insane anymore, then you can have discussions about their fear, but not usually during it. Kind of like a drowning person. While somebody's drowning, discussing their drowning isn't very meaningful. All they're interested in is getting out of the water. Let me get to Catherine and Martha. I always love this one because I'm never quite really sure who I'm talking to. Unless, of course, that could be one person, you know. I feel and act victimized regarding my weight issues. In the past, I've been able to keep my weight down through support groups, no pills or weird stuff. I eat my uncomfortableness, my loneliness. I'm tired of being a victim with this. I quit calling my food in every day. I'm not quite sure quite what this means. I quit calling my food in every day. I guess like a food service, like a delivery, and lying about what I was eating. I quit calling my food in every day. Either that or calling my food in. Maybe that means like calling in and talking to a sponsor. I'm not sure. And lying about what I was eating. Ah, here we are, 12-step with a food sponsor. That's what it means. I decided to quit that and focus on other things. Spirituality instead. I got the picture now. So you decided to quit calling and talking every day to somebody who, like a sponsor and saying, here's what I eat. Instead, you just focused on spirituality. I get it. I'm a little dense, so forgive me. I'm making some changes, especially with real love. But how can my outside show that I love myself? I don't believe I want to be a model, just more healthy looking. I know my outside shows I'm a victim. What's your take on this, Martha? Okay. The eating is so complicated. It is a fact that the worse we feel, the more emotional pain we feel, the more we eat. So, true fact that eating is an addiction, and the more miserable we are, the more we tend to overeat and become overweight. It is also a fact that some happy, healthy people eat because they enjoy it and are overweight. Some people who eat some take two people who eat exactly the same diets, and one person will be skinny and one person will be heavier. So there's genes, metabolism, it's a mess. In the short term, I would worry a whole lot more about being happier and feeling loved and not obsessing about how much you weigh. You're going to be a whole lot happier in the long run if you do that right now. Then, gradually, bit by bit, if you want to start thinking about, all right, how could I eat healthier without worrying about what other people think about how you look and how much you weigh? That'll be a far healthier way to lose weight than trying to lose weight because other people think you should, which just doesn't motivate people to keep pounds off in the long run. Just doesn't work. So being happy is the most important thing by far. Worrying about how you look and what people think of you matter far less, even than the health of losing weight. Everybody spends all this time talking about how long we're going to live. How long we live matters spit compared to how happy we are while we live. I had a friend call 3 months ago, and her family had been just irritating her to death about getting chemotherapy because she had been recently diagnosed with cancer, and she wanted to know what I thought. And I said, who cares what I think? What do you think? She said, well, I just don't want to go through that again. I'd rather be happy in my last 3 months. I said, well, then we're done. That's what you want to do that. She was just so relieved. So in her last 3 months of life, she had to take some pain medication, but not a lot. She never went to the hospital. She spent the whole 3 months at home. At first walking around, then in a wheelchair, and then in her bed, but surrounded by her family and pretty happy and lucid almost up to the last, just a handful of days. I visited her several times. She was so happy she went that way. She enjoyed her life rather than simply prolonging a miserable life, which should be, I would think, the goal of all of us, regardless of the diagnosis of cancer. Enjoy yourself. And if for now that means that you enjoy the company of loving people, and occasionally you enjoy a cream-filled donut, well then, who cares? Really. I'd be glad to talk to you about this, by the way, extensively in person if you'd like. My email address is greg@reallove.com. You email me, and I'll give you my home phone. We have John on the line. How could we have a group without John? My 3-year-old son has recently moved into a preschool room, which is a little scary. I mean, putting John's son in with anybody would be a little scary to everybody else. We should write him a letter. With 4- and 5-year-olds. That's a big thing, by the way. The difference between a 3-year-old and 4- and 5-year-olds is big. You think, well, it's just only 1 or 2 years. No, it's only 1/3 to 2/3 of his life difference. It's big. His hitting others and me has increased. That's hardly a surprise. He's feeling more stressed. We discussed the hitting and the consequences. He loses his favorite toy, or he does not get to do or is removed from a certain activity. Last night, nothing really stopped him from his hitting. I told him what would happen. If I hit, I talked to him very calmly, but it did not help. He then started to hit me again. He can really hit hard for his size. I finally told him that if he was going to hit, that he could not be with me or others. So I took him to his room and shut his door. He went crazy. I talked to him and told him why, that I wanted him to be with me, but that hitting was not allowed. I never left the door. That's very nice of you, by the way. This is very important, by the way. What John's describing here as a consequence is very loving. So he tells this 3-year-old, if you want to be with sane, civilized people, one of the rules of being with sane, civilized people is that you don't get to be hitting. If you take a look around you, 3-year-olds understand this, by the way. Take a look around. All of the sane, civilized people are not hitting each other. That's just one of the rules that we all have. We all get to hang around each other because there's no hitting or shooting or, spitting on each other. It's just one of the agreements we all have. So if you want to hit, you can do that, but you have to do that by yourself. So you could go in your room, I suppose, and hit yourself in the head, but we don't do that with each other. Then he goes and he sticks the kid in his room where he can't hit anybody. He's not being punished. He's only being put in a place where he can't hit people. See? Now, notice that John doesn't just drop him there and say, screw you, I'm leaving you. He doesn't leave the door. He stays there with his kid. This is very cool. It's very touching, actually. Where were we? I never left the door. After about 2 minutes, see, he doesn't dump the kid there and say, okay, I'll come back, when you're 8, which is tempting. He says, after 2 minutes, I open the door. He's just trying to show the kid, we don't hit, In fact, you could accomplish the same thing if you put him in and opened the door after 1 minute. Whatever. A short period of time. The kid's just getting the message, we don't hit. Tears are streaming down his face. Of course, he hates it. We laid down on the bed. I laid down on the bed with him. And he was laying on my chest. I told him that I loved him. See, this is so sweet. Oh, just... He's not lecturing him. He's not smacking him around. It's hysterical when an adult hits a child and says, I told you not to hit anybody. I told him I loved him, and I just did not understand why he was hitting, and that maybe what I just did was wrong, and that I want to love him better, and that I would work on that, help. Actually, what you just did was perfect. I don't know how I would improve on it. I'm reading on to see if you have more. Here we are. When I told my son I loved him and spoke to him that way, I noticed that it was one of the first time in my life that I had spoken to someone like that. Yes! Wow, that in itself is utterly amazing and sad. Yes! Okay, see, that's where you hit the golden... It's where you hit the gold chest. is not only did you put him in the room, but then after the consequences, what you do is you show them an even greater outpouring of love. You say, I really want to be with you. It's not just, I want to throw you in your room and be separated from you. No, I really want to be with you. I'm sorry that you feel like hitting sometimes, and I hate it when I'm separated from you like this, and you really can't be around me when I'm hitting you. Another little trick that you might try sometimes, by the way, just to break up the consequences of his hitting you, is that when he hits you, is immediately run up to him and throw your arms around him and hug him right then and see if he stops. I've seen that work on a number of occasions. I mean, after all, he's only hitting you because he's not feeling loved in the first place. And so see if hugging him immediately makes a difference. If the hitting stops, haven't you made your point anyway? So you're done. So if you hug him and he stops hitting, we're finished. Lesson learned. If he hits you another time later that evening, because apparently hitting's a problem with this kid, hug him again. If he hits you again, then I might take him to the room and then shut the door for 30 to 60 seconds. The idea is making the point. It's not how long. Then he comes out, tears in the face, blah, 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 and then you hug him and say, oh, I missed you. You know, this is, I missed you and I loved you after 60 seconds. You think he's not going to get the point that you love him? Of course he is. He's going to decide, let's see, I'd rather be with Dad than not. Duh. This little story you just told is very touching. Tina said, since the Real Love in the Workplace workshop, I've been propelled into even more opportunities to learn these principles. The one I've been working on is telling the truth. I had several opportunities of truth-telling and letting go of the outcome. I had to risk losing approval, being rejected, and even attacked. Yeah, that's the whole deal with truth-telling. It's why people don't do it. It requires, what is the absolute key companion to telling the truth? Faith. Period. That's the whole trick of telling the truth. Faith. You don't know what's going to happen. The whole trick is you tell the truth and you simply let the consequences happen. If you tell the truth and try to control the consequences, you're screwed. It's not really truth-telling. So, she said, I had to risk losing approval, risk being rejected, and risk being attacked. Right. That's what truth-telling is. Way to go. But I knew I had to, or I would be lying. Exactly. The instant we try to control the outcome, we will be manipulating and lying. See? She's got the point. This is powerful when we let go of others' reactions. You want to write the next book? That's exactly the point. And until we let go of other people's reactions, pay attention here, until we let go of other people's reactions, we are in a prison of our own making. What irony, huh? Until we let go, the prison that's around us, we've created. When we let go and we quit worrying about what everybody thinks and what they're going to do, now we're free. We don't have to worry. Well, if I tell the truth, he might hate me. Yes, he might. So, it turns out that he already doesn't like you anyway. As you tell the truth, you're just going to finally learn that. You were just kidding yourself in the first place. So, this is back to Tina telling the truth. One person did attack, and I was able to know that it was not about me. Now, look at the lesson she learned. She told the truth. One person did attack. See, some people would say, well, I told the truth and somebody attacked. See, something bad happened. No, a wonderful lesson happened. One person attacked, and I learned that it wasn't about me. How do you ever learn you're going to survive an attack until you tell the truth? The attack happens, and you go, wow, cool. Nobody died, and it wasn't about me anyway. See? Like my daughter, who took, as I was telling at the top of our little webcast here, and my daughter who took her son to the football game, or the football practice, and the coach was a little gruff, and she was a little concerned, and I'm going, shh, be cool. And one of the first things that happened in the football practice was, here are these little kids. I mean, these are kindergartners and first graders. They're 5 and 6. They're babies. And this football league, brain dead, some of these men, just brain dead. They're 5 and 6 years old. And so what do? They adopt as the official football for the 5 and 6-year-olds. The football has stamped right on it for 9 and 10-year-olds. So the ball is way too big for these kids. Did anybody pay attention? No. So here's this enormous ball, and the coach stands way back too far from the kids, throws this overhand pass right into my grandson's face. I mean, smashes Bradley right in the face. Still, he bounces off his face. He catches the ball. You can see tears welling up in this little kid's face. But he bravely catches the ball, throws it back into the coach's hands. And my daughter, you can just see, she has this, she's a bear after all. She has this gleam in her eyes like, I'm going to get a dagger and kill the coach. And I'm thinking, no, this is great. This is a great lesson. Sure enough, when the practice is over with, what does he remember? Did you see that catch? He caught the ball with his face, and he lived through it. It was a great experience for him. And now in the second practice, he's done even better, and he's gone to a game, and he's growing from it. We learn from these experiences. So here she is. She's told the truth. Tina has. One person did attack. I was able to learn it was not about me. It was freeing to be able to love them and want what is best for them and not get engaged when they are wanting to be on the field of death. We can only learn this stuff when we take the chance and tell the truth, when there's risk involved. None of that can happen as long as we're lying and protecting ourselves and playing on the field of death. All impossible. So my hat is off to you. Way to go, Tina. It's all about faith. It's very gutty. Here's what I assume to be Martha of Catherine and Martha. Says, are you writing a real love for the classroom or for educators? I have it outlined. I started it, and I haven't finished it. 2 reasons. One, I've been busy writing 14 other books, and now we're busy doing the real love in the workplace thing. And the other is that teachers are absolutely the hardest group on a planet to teach anything. I'm not kidding. Getting this into the education system would be, if somebody could help me get this into the education system, I'd probably write it. But it is almost impossible to get anything into education. Teachers just are very difficult to teach. It's tough. So if we could get a way for it to get in, I agree. It says here, there's so much control that goes on in school. Many teachers get it, many don't. It can be sad. I agree with you, but it's a very rigid system, and it's difficult to break into. So one of the reasons that I haven't gone to the trouble to write it is about getting it in there. Pleasanton. Just wanted to share a positive experience about sharing the truth about myself to a real love buddy. I was feeling a bit discouraged about myself after reacting in anger last night, and when I was able to tell the truth, I felt such relief and heard such great words of wisdom from the real love wise person. Isn't that fun? Now I feel so much better and have some new strategies, tools to apply and use in the future, thanks to Tina. I'm telling you, honey, there's just nothing like the feeling of being alone and angry and distant and stupid and lost and confused, and then to tell the truth about yourself to somebody else and get loved and get some words of counsel and wisdom and bounce back and realize you don't have to stay stupid and confused for the rest of your life. Whereas without this understanding, gosh, most of us would have stayed lost and confused forever. So yeah, I'm pretty grateful myself. Here's a note from John. Martha says, I've tried jogging several times in my life. Each time I stop because I can't jog fast. I can only jog slow. And that's embarrassing. Since real love, I start jogging again. I now use a heart monitor. Last week, I went out on a long run. There were inchworms that were outpacing me. Really, you could walk fast and outrun me. But it didn't bother me. And when I was done, I thought I'd run 10 miles. It turns out that I'd run only 4 miles. But for me, it was a huge milestone. I'd never run that far before. And I'd never burned 11,000 calories either. I've not run that far lately, but I still jog with the inchworms on days that I can jog. Everyone may be laughing, but it doesn't bother me, thanks to real love. Same thing with losing weight, which is, I'm sure, the point that John's making here. You just, you know, Martha, you do what you can do. You decide that you're going to make phone calls and get loved by people and feel happier first, then decide, I'm going to start some exercise program. And if that means that you're going to exercise while you're eating Krispy Kremes, well, you know, it's just none of their freaking business. Who cares? You do one thing at a time. You do what you can do. And what you can do is all you can do. It doesn't matter what other people are doing. Irrelevant. And then you try an exercise program. And if initially that means that you roll out of bed twice a day instead of once, well, do that. Whatever gets your heart rate up, you know? Walk around the block once. Do it twice. Write it down. Only because what we tend to write down, we tend to do something that makes you exceed whatever your pace was a little bit each time, or a little bit week by week. But you don't have to report to anybody else, or you can if you want to. Report to a real love person, though. Don't report to a rabid, recovering eater who makes you feel bad when you fail, you know? Report to a real love person and say, hey, you know, yesterday I was good, I stayed on my diet, and today I went to Sonny's Barbecue and ate all-you-can-eat ribs, which, by the way, right now sounds just really attractive to me, personally. Enough of that. So you do what you can do. John has a really good suggestion. Melissa says, by the way, I'm so glad that the kids are able to see me watching these video chats because it opens up all kinds of conversations about real love with them. Yeah, no kidding. And as I'm sure most of you know, these are archived. I'm not sure exactly how Mike does these, but Mike, you probably just edit out just like the beginning and dead spots. Yeah. But these are great for kids to watch. It's great for kids to see their parents willing simply to learn. Tonight, for example, as I talked to the lady at group that I was talking to you about earlier, whose son she was trying to control about going to the cross-country team. And I said, you know, the first thing you do now is you go home tonight and you tell him what you learned about controlling him, because he loves to hear that. She said, you're right, he does. He loves to hear about what I learn about parenting. Our kids love to watch us learn. Duh. I mean, here we are telling them to be willing to learn, and yet we want to appear to be infallible. Well, that's kind of like hypocritical, don't you think? We want them to admit their mistakes, but we don't admit ours. Yeah, hypocrite. Yeah, I know. Virginia says, my family and I were at SeaWorld on Saturday. I love SeaWorld. I found myself wandering in my mind and fantasizing about being anywhere else but where I was. I asked myself why that had happened and realized that I was feeling empty and alone and just running away in the only way I could. Make sense? I know why I was feeling empty, and that was because of my husband's criticisms about what seemed like everything. Oh, what a beautiful insight into what was going on. I didn't realize it then, but I realize now that he was probably feeling empty and afraid too. Yeah. How could I have supported him if I had recognized his emptiness sooner and hadn't been so empty myself? Oh, what a genius question. All right, so genius on your part to even recognize that you were running in your own head. So, had you recognized sooner, as soon as he started complaining, he's empty and afraid. You got that. So what could you do? The first thing we tend to do is we respond with our own getting and protective behaviors, right? So we tend to, like if somebody criticizes, we tend to criticize them back. So they say, well, the kids aren't whatever it is. People start complaining. And then what we do is, well, you're no great picnic to be with either. So we tend to start arguing back with them. Well, we all know where that goes, straight into the toilet. So first of all, you're not going to argue with his criticisms. Never fight one criticism with another. You're just going to start a fire. You're going to make it worse. He's already started the fire. The next thing we do, well, or the first thing, depending on our personality, but another thing we tend to do is to withdraw from it. We just hate being around that kind of stuff, which is what you did. You just separated yourself in your mind, or sometimes even physically. People start doing that, and you watch the family. The kids start peeling away from this guy. The wife distances herself from this guy. Everybody's just like, let's get ourselves away from this creep who's making the day miserable. Here we are at SeaWorld to have fun, and here's this creep ruining the day for everybody. And so he's out here, and everybody else is back there. And, of course, then he's saying, all right, come on, keep up, keep up. I mean, I've watched this over and over. Actually, I can remember living this more than once. So here he is yelling at everybody and ruining the day. So what do? As soon as you recognize that he's unhappy, you go right up on his hip. You put your arm around his waist and you say, sweetie, what would you like to do most right now? You don't say, what are you griping and complaining about? That won't help. And you don't necessarily have to address what particular thing he's complaining about, because you've got to remember, he doesn't even know why he's complaining. He really doesn't. So get to the root of the whole thing. Give him a chance to tell you what he really wants. Go right up to him and say, what would you most like to do right now? And you know what may spill out of his mouth? You may be stunned. It might be, I wish we could go back to the hotel. Really? He may be absolutely sick of being there, in which case you have a great opportunity to perform a miracle right there. You might say, let's do this then. I could see why you'd hate to be out here with the crowds. You don't like this kind of thing. Why don't we've had a great time so far. Why don't I see which of the kids wants to finish the day at SeaWorld, You go back to the hotel, go get in the pool, watch TV, whatever he likes to do. Get a Budweiser. What does he like? Find out what he wants. You're really listening, see? What do you want to do? That doesn't obligate you to do it with him. Doesn't obligate you to spit. But you're going to find out what he wants. If you really ask him like that what he wants, I'll bet you're going to find out. Instead of just trying to placate him. Notice how different this is from what most people do, which is trying to keep the peace. Which is going up and going, oh, let's just try to soothe him. Try to make things peaceful for the kids. No, this is a completely different thing that I'm talking about. You're trying to really find out what does he want. He goes, well, I don't know. No, you stop. You take him over in the shade, out of the sun. You take the kids, you say, go over there and get a snow cone. Go away. And now there's no kids around, no pressure, and you say to him, no, what would you most like to do? And he's going to tell you. No joke. And it might be go home. It might be go someplace else. It might be, you might be stunned. But if you really ask him, you're going to find out. Whereas we almost never ask that dang question, do we? What do you want? Instead, we try to get peace for ourselves. And we do it by attacking, we do it by criticizing, we do it by running, we do it by, wouldn't that be fun? Can you imagine how different your day would have gone if you'd really asked? He might have said, I'm sick of listening to Susie whine, for example. At which point you could have said, you know what? She is whining. I'll take her back to the hotel. You and the other kids finish the day at SeaWorld. Would that be a better something? Anything would be better than finishing the day in hell. You see? There's always a solution that's better than whatever it is that you're listening to, that miserable situation that you're in. And see, it's always about love. It's always about listening to him. John says, by the way, I listen to the Power of Real Love Stories while I jog. They're amazing. I agree they're amazing. Listening to how people's lives change amaze me. And then John said something nice to me, and he's such a flatterer. He only does it so I'll read his questions. Let's see. Pleasanton. By the way, after attending the video chat a few weeks ago and surrendering the issue... Oh, this is a follow-up. I love follow-ups. Attending the video chat a few weeks ago and surrendering the issue about my 11-year-old's misery at the new private school. Those of you who remember this. This was an 11-year-old who said, I want to go to this new school. And it was a private school, and they paid their tuition. And then the 11-year-old starts going to the school, and then it turns out his friends, for various reasons, and part of it was that his friends' parents couldn't afford to pay the anyway, his friends who had originally promised to go to the private school with him didn't end up going. And so now here he is alone at the private school, and he's going, oh, my life is terrible. I don't want to go to this school. And his parents are now stuck having paid the tuition and the kids at the new school, and he's bemoaning his life. I came home to a positive letter, a homework assignment to his teacher, and it's gotten better and better every day since. He's now very happy there, and it came right after I was willing to accept him and the situation exactly as it was. Thanks for the help with that. Good for you. And remember, it was a big thing that she not turn it into a big victim thing. Just accept everything as it was. This is the way it's going to be. Love the kid, support the kid. Good for you. And here we are. Now we're back to the question with the lady who was at SeaWorld with her husband. She said, you're right. Even a blind squirrel will find an acorn now and then. We usually just try to make excuses for his behavior and do something away from him. But I've asked him what he really away from him. But I've never asked him what he really wants. What a concept. Of course you haven't. I mean, when somebody's being a monster, all we want to do is get away from them. I mean, it never occurs to us that the monster, the person who's going, is the person who's actually in need. It just wouldn't occur to us to see them that way. And yet, he is. He is the person in need. So good for you. And I emphasize, it can't be done in haste. It can't be done with any impatience. If you come up to him while he's growling and go, okay, all right, what's bothering you? You're screwed. Or if you say, all right, what do you want? Again, you're screwed. No, you got to take the kids, set them down, give them a snow cone, whatever. They're out of the picture. Goodbye. Say, psst, psst, or feed them to Shamu, something. Then you sit with him so that nothing's distracting, and ask him what he wants and mean it. And you'll be knocked over by the difference in him. So way to go. I've watched men, by the way, as I've done this in counseling, I've watched both men and women, but I'm doing this with you because you're a woman and you're asking me about your husband. But I've watched men when their wives have asked them, what do you want, for the first time in their entire marriages. I've watched great big hulking men just weep when they're asked that question. So it's that big a deal. They act like they're great big, but they're really just little kids wanting somebody to ask them, what would you like? What flavor of snow cone would you like, little Billy? That's what they really are. So we got 1 minute left, which is not enough to answer a question. So it's just been an absolute hoot having you here. Loved it, and we'll see you next Tuesday. Look forward to having you, your friends, your neighbors, your kids, and send your questions ahead. Love them. Love you. We'll see you next Tuesday.